My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sri Sankaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. I'm going to continue Mahan's meditation. I think I last stopped in terms of the first three benefits of meditation, and we spoke about Swamiji's 3 stages of initiation, and I spoke about this on the rising the Kundalini, how it helps us, it gives us a focused mind and intellectual growth, because parts of our brains are kind of nourished. Then Swamiji introduced the second step, which is the descending step, where the energy flow passes through the spinal cord, and that actually improves the health and the overall well-being of the body. And finally, he raises to the third eye, which is actually the top eye, which actually what he calls a cleansing stage, where it helps the mind to be more calmer, cooler, and it gives you a kind of a blissful experience. It removes all the kind of thoughts and experiences that causes the mind to shrink. The turbulence, the volatility all dissipates, and you get a very peaceful. So Swamiji shows these 3 stages of this initiation. The one who practices this will experience some of the benefits. And I showed that how by practicing this, one discovers or gets that spiritual connectedness, what I call the spiritual compass that guides us in everything that we do. Our thoughts, our words, our actions become more and more divine, more and more inspirational, and it is anchored on sound, spiritual values, rational thought, and, scientific approach, a logical way of looking at things. And I spoke about this in the last few satsangs. And I also spoke about the kind of, when you practice over a period of time, you start, getting the benefits of this practice. And the first one, of course, discovering our own spiritual compass and our direction and our purpose. And that gives us that connectedness state, you see. So, and why is that really important? When we get that connected state, we feel that energy much more stronger. And I showed how that improves the health of the brain. Parts of our brain is nourished. Parts of our brain, the neurotransmitter becomes more connected. And this is really important for those who are in the early stages, particularly in the youth. When you're practicing meditation, helps you in your studies, in your professional life, in your family life. But it's also very important for people who are aging. It helps you because when we age, we know that parts of our brains, particularly our neurotransmitters, and that which connects starts, becoming, slow, and in terms of connectivity, it starts getting, diminished, or, parts of the connectivity starts declining, and you see that forgetfulness. You have, the information flow is not smooth. Anxiety creeps in, panic attack, and a whole host of things that happens as we age. But when you practice meditation, you become more alert. The connectivity is more stronger. The ability to think, the ability to focus, all these things, continues to get stronger and stronger. So the health of the brain improves, and the brain health is also linked to the health of the body. The body's health is also improves. It controls all your hormones, your metabolism, and so on. We also showed that how that physical health, the brain-body connection, has an impact on our mental and our emotional state. We don't swing in exuberance, nor fall in terms of depression or emotional instability. It becomes more and more calmer, more and more balanced. more and more harmonized. So we see, I spoke about that the last time. Today, I want to speak about how this meditation helps us, to build strong intellectual capital. That means ability to rationalize, ability to capture information, because information is so important, how to capture that information, how to make sense of that information, how to use that information for strategic decision making, and how to use that information to create value, including an enlightened way of life. So you see that spiritual connectedness, the health of the body and the brain, this harmonized, very strong mental stamina and emotional state has an impact on our intellectual capital or capability. This is very important as we in our lives, in every stages of our lives. So I want to spend today on what I experienced and what Mahan has spoken about and other scientific work that show that as you practice meditation, your intellectual capacity, your intellectual curiosity, your intellectual capability, and your creativity goes up. So here it is. So we showed that, one of the things that when we practice this meditation is that it enhances the neural connectivity in the brain. And we saw that in all the previous lectures that I showed, how that meditation and the mindfulness helps us to connect that neural connectivity in the brain throughout the spinal cord and throughout the body. So the signals that are coming in, it is able to capture that information and be more harmonized, and that interconnectivity helps the mind and the intellect to operate in a much more symbiotically, more kind of a harmonized way. So the first thing that happens is that our neural connectivity in the brain enhanced, the networks become stronger, and that helps us with focus. That helps us with concentration. Focus and concentration is very important because it helps us to observe carefully the thoughts that are in our mind, why the thoughts are generated, why the thoughts are there. It helps us to introspect, contemplate, reflect. So that this meditation helps us to build strong focus and intensity. And this is something that is very important if we want to be able to enhance our learning and our knowledge acquisition. So the other aspect is, so the focus is really important. The concentration helps us. Also, something very interesting happens is that parts of our brains are being stimulated, the connectivity happens. It also, helps us to reduce stress because a kind of sense of calmness, coolness dawns upon us. The focus and the concentration helps us to not dissipate our thoughts in many places. It helps us to regroup, helps us to focus on things that are really important, things that are calming, things that are actually more soothing, that gives us a little bit more quietude. And that actually reduces stress and helps us manage our anxiety, what we call emotional regulation. We're able to regulate our own emotions, as we saw in the previous lecture. Why this is really important is that when we're able to manage our emotions, we do not waste your energy, because oftentimes we're wasting our energy of worrying this, that, we're trying to put things together, and sometimes we are not sharp in our thoughts. We forget things. We kind of go back and forth. All this wastes energy. So if we have that focus and the concentration, the kind of calm and sublimity, you see that we waste less of our energy. Our brains don't have to work really hard. So that stored energy could be used in a much more productive way. So that stress management, anxiety actually helps us to manage, so actually saves our ourselves, it saves all the energy that the brain doesn't have to overwork. So this is really good, that those energy could be channeled for more productive use. And that is really important. So we can channel that energy into something really productive. That means we can focus on things that are matters, focus on things that are important, and focus on things that will help us deepen that thought and that experience. When we do that, it helps us to enhance our memory. Those thoughts transition from that short-term memory to the longer-term memory. So what we have thought about very deeply now ends up in a long-term memory, and we remember it, right? And this is the beauty of this meditation, is that remember that the third eye, the top eye, and the memory bank are interfacing, and what we learn is stored in the memory like a library, well sought out library. And that library is, there is a separation between the packets of thought, but also it is quite porous. So when we want that thought, we can access that thought or the knowledge, but also there are times that because that boundaries are very porous, there's cross-pollination, and that two pieces of information experience combines to give you greater insights into things. So this memory bank becomes like a fantastic library. And that helps us with cognitive abilities. What does that mean? Ability to think in a creative way, ability to have maybe 3 or 4 thoughts. Maybe you're just thinking one thought at a time. When we practice meditation, this library enables us to mix and match those different thoughts to come up with something really creative. So we have the cognitive abilities to become flexible, to become really fluid in how we think. We get new insights, new ideas, new knowledge from this combined, knowledge that is embedded in our long-term memories. So it's percolating and gives us that cognitive ability to address many challenges, complex problems, and so on. Sometimes you may have 3 or 4 key memories that are stored, but a particular problem comes which is really complex. Now you see that these knowledge combine to be able to resolve that complex problems, right? So this is the power why our intellect becomes more deepened, more broader, more sharper, is because something physiological that is happening to the brain, our ability to analyze, the ability to introspect, ability to store that memory, and our ability to cross-pollinate this combined knowledge to create better knowledge, or more what we call that multiplier effect. Now, all this is really helps us, as when these memories, cognitive ability is enhanced, over time we become more and more aware of ourselves, the self-awareness. That means we see that our brain and our mind, our intellect combined, could be a powerful tool. And that tool, that's what Swamiji calls the inner, we have the telescope and the electron microscope. This is the inner scope that helps us to, explore the terrains within ourselves. This is what we call self-awareness. We become more aware of our personality, that subject in us. It helps us to introspect deeper. It helps us to contemplate deeper. It helps us to reflect all the experiences, the good, the not so good, the inspiring, all those things. It is able to experience it, introspect, contemplate, reflect, and meditate. It helps you to focus. And we have a deeper understanding of every experience, every thought, and deeper insights and understanding of those. Understanding and insight gives us greater knowledge and wisdom. So you see that the gradual process takes place. We also, with this kind of self-awareness, the improved cognitive ability, the memory, we see that we're able to solve really complex problems. We actually start looking at we enhance our problem-solving skills. No matter how complicated the problems are, you're able to slowly unpack that complexity and then start finding solutions, maybe not for the whole problem, but bits and pieces of the problem, and ultimately you put that puzzle together. Right? So it's really complex. This knowledge is very complex. But, the brain is powerful, the mind is sharp and deep, the intellect is very, very, precise, and the memory banks are there that is enhanced and helps us to draw upon that inner resources to find solutions to the most complex problems, including the discovery of the divinity of the self within us. So this is something that helps us in terms of build our intellectual capital. The other aspect that is really interesting that I found was that when you practice meditation, you see, the brain and the mind needs rest. In that restful period, it cleanses out all the toxins that you build up over the day that your mind is, being utilized. So when we sleep, it cleanses all the toxins, all the chemicals and the remnants. So sleep, when that happens, the sleep, actually, the deep sleep, you go into deep sleep very fast, right? And you see that when you wake up, your energy levels are very good. The brain has had good rest. The stamina is really great. And the overall well-being now becomes really good. So something very interesting happens is that when you have good quality sleep, your energy levels are great, your ability to think becomes better, your stamina, you can think deeper over a longer period of time, and you see that your overall well-being, you're always feeling healthy, inspired, and you see that that helps us to analyze information, make inference, make sense, and relate to things around us. So one of the important symptoms of you practicing meditation is that your sleep patterns are very good. Your rhythm, sleep rhythm is quite synchronized. So this is a quality, and that helps the mind and the intellect to work really efficiently. When all this happens, something very interesting happens is that your mind and your intellect doesn't become lethargic or lazy, right? It is always exploring. It's always curious. It's always wanting to know, always wanting to learn, right? And that is that discoverer, the explorer that in you that starts continuously, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. You want to know the unknown, right? So the curiosity is increased. When the curiosity increases, you see that you start searching for that knowledge, right? You start seeking that which did not make sense, and you're trying to make sense, and that in that intensity, that in itself is meditation. So we see that in that process, you see that the connectivity, the neural pathways become more intensive, more harmonized, and it requires focus and precision, as I mentioned earlier. So there's a fantastic feedback loop that happens. You become more curious, wanting to learn, become more focused, you waste less energy on other things, become more concentrated, your memory becomes more sharper, your cognitive ability improves, and all this helps you to find the answers that you are searching, solve the problems that you are trying to solve, able to become creative, productive. And you see that, in that process of learning, discovering, creating value, understanding, you see that you become more happier, you become more knowledgeable, and you become more and more connected to the journey as an explorer. So this is something that I've seen, it's written a lot about by great saints and sages. I personally have experienced this. The moment I picked up meditation, that learning continued all the way into, from high school right up to postdoctoral research, and the research still continues. And you're always curious to find out why this is happening, how this is happening. There are things that you know that you don't know, so you want to know, right? So, and you become more curious. Mahan was curious. A lot of great people are curious, and that's how they push the boundaries of knowledge to discover the secrets of this universe, the secrets of the self. And all this has an impact on our intellectual capital. That builds that knowledge treasure that is embedded in us, that nature has blessed us with. If we don't use it, if we don't meditate, if we don't use our spiritual capital, our brains will dissipate. Our body health will be impacted. Our emotional state will not be harmonized, will always be in a state of flux and turbulence, and our intellectual capacity, capability, curiosity will be diminished. So we see that anybody that practices meditation, you see that they have all these qualities. They're very sharp. They know the subtle things. When they read something, they know the subtleties. When somebody speaks, they can understand. So that people may see those as words, but they see poetry. They see things weave together. They see dimensions that many people don't see. So that is the power of this meditation, because the connectivity of the neural pathways helps you to get better and deeper insights into things, including experiencing that self, the divinity, the spark of the divinity in us. A gross mind will miss it, because divinity or God or this whatever substratum you call, it is very, very, very subtle. It requires an amazingly refined mind. It requires an intellect that is really, really sharp, like an electron microscope, that could decipher. It has to be much more precise than the best telescope to be able to see distant light and yet show the entire universe. This is how powerful that inner scope that gives us that intellectual capital that this great Mahan has shown. So what is it that we get from this meditation, this intellectual capital? You see that you become creative, that ingenuity. You find that amazing resources within you. You are original. You don't copy other people. You don't mortgage your intelligence, right? You have that sense of cleverness. Most people will do things by instruction, but you have that cleverness. In Malay, we say cerdik, right? The cleverness, right? You have that vision, longer, big picture. You know what's the most micro things, but you also know the macro level. Like they say, you know the trees, but you can also see the whole jungle, right? So you see, you have amazing imagination. You're always inspired. If you are an artist, you have amazing artistic skill. If you are a musician, you have amazing ideas for a music composition, right? If you are a business person, you become very innovative in your business. This is what happens. So when you practice this meditation, your intellectual capital grows, not only spiritually, but intellectually, and in everything that you do, you're able to get good insights, including the knowledge of the scriptures, knowledge of the Mahans, scientific work, philosophical work, poetry. You're able to understand. You become very resourceful, right? You become very talented in whatever you do. And this is what this wonderful practice gives us. Sometimes I have fantastic ideas and I put it down in paper and go back and reflect. I say, wow, amazing. I don't know where this came from, but it came from somewhere inside me, right? So we see this inner vision, that insight is actually the sight that comes from within ourselves. And if our mind is anchored onto the divine spirit, that insight is much more profound. And you become original. You don't copy other people. You have your own original ideas. And this is what this great Mahan has taught me over the many, many years of practicing this. And it is a spectacular journey that, if you put it to practice every day, wake up in the morning, you practice, you have deep insights into, you read whatever scriptures and you have your own insights, and you write it down, and slowly over time, you see that you are actually unpacking the divinity from within yourself. You're unpacking that amazing inner resource within all of us. You're unpacking that God force within all of us to be able to make our lives meaningful, purposeful, resourceful, value-based, and impact. And this is the capital, the fourth capital of this Mahan that I have learned, put to practice, and acquired. I hope all of you also can at least try to nurture this. And if you did this, you will age gracefully. You will never complain. You will never say, I don't have anything. You will never say, I am poor. You will never say anything negative because you have all the inner resources to be successful in whatever you do. With that, Sandosha.